So let's dive right into inner core unit to start off with. And here we're looking at 4 muscles, and these make up the deepest part of our inner core unit. And the reason why it's so great to start here is that these muscles are the foundations of everything from breathing right through to sort of doing an explosive squat, for example, because they literally hold the stabilization of our spine. And if our spine isn't stable and we're not able to integrate the difference between our limbs and our spine and our trunk, then we're not able to actually optimally do that exercise. So the definition of core stability is actually the ability to hold the midsection still or the spine still whilst the arms and legs move. And in order to do that, we need to set up a system. We need to have this system in our body that allows us to reduce the pressure that's actually on that spine, allows us to contract inwards and really make a solid base for ourselves so that we can move our arms and legs independently. Now, here we're talking about engaging the core and what that means. What is activation of the core? But first of all, let me show you these inner core unit muscles. We've got the multifidus, which runs literally down the spine, and that's a real great stabilizer for the spine and also can help with back extension a little bit. So it helps extend the spine and keep it upright. And then you'll also notice we've got the diaphragm included in the inner core unit. And most people are really surprised to see this here because they just relate it to breathing, but it's a massive part of this inner core unit. And then we've got the pelvic floor down the bottom here. And that works like a hammock shape from the front to the back of the body. And literally here it sits in the pelvis like a hammock, and it can be used like a second diaphragm in relation not just to breathing but to actually holding the body in place. And then the final part of the inner core unit is the transversus abdominus, and it works like a corset. It literally wraps around the entirety of the core and abdomen area. And that really allows you to pull in and pull up. Now, you can probably see on here that these 4 muscles basically draw together to create a cylinder. Now, this cylinder is really important because it allows us to add a certain amount of intra-abdominal pressure. Now, this intra-abdominal pressure allows us to take the weight off the spine and the intervertebral discs that sit in the spine, because this will allow us to move forwards and also to allow us to take the weight off the spine, allowing us to lift heavier motions and keep the trunk stable whilst moving arms and legs, which again is the definition of core. Now, when we engage our core, everybody uses different words to engage their core, different stimuluses to make sure that they're engaging their core. But one that you'll hear quite often is to pull the belly button in. Pull the belly button in towards the spine. Now, if you pull the belly button in, it will look like this line I've just drawn on the image here. Literally, your aim is to pull the transverse abdominis in slightly. Now, that will only work if we keep all of the others equal. So as long as I keep my back straight when I do that, I don't dome it, and I keep my diaphragm fairly even, and I keep my pelvic floor fairly even, and I pull that belly button in, then I will be increasing the amount of pressure that is happening in the inside of my abdominal cavity, which will add to the security and the stability of my spinal column. That's what activating your core is all about. However, we don't just do that from pulling our belly button in. You can also do it from breathing. Now, if you have ever lifted heavy weights, or you know anyone that does extreme powerlifting, for example, they're a big fan of using breathing to help activate the core and stabilize the spine. And for that, they'll do a big intake of breath, and then they'll hold it whilst they do their exercise, and then they'll gradually release it on the returning phase of the lift, for example, so that they're able to literally create the pressure in that abdomen just by a deep in breath, which will obviously lower the diaphragm down by contracting it. So as it contracts, it lowers down into that pressure spot and it increases the intra-abdominal pressure in that whole trunk area. It's also the same in Pilates. They talk about pulling up the pelvic floor. And from this point of view, you're looking at almost pulling up the inside. Some people say it's like pretending you're stopping yourself from going for a wee, for example. You want to pull the whole upper side of your pelvic floor up. And as you pull that up, you can also engage the core from pulling in the belly button and lowering the diaphragm with your breath. So by using all three of these points, you're able to really get intra-abdominal pressure. And that's what we're looking for when you're working from a core perspective, especially if you're doing core stability exercises. You're looking at engaging the core with a little engagement of pulling in the belly button, good deep breaths, and also a little pull up from the pelvic floor. So all three work together whilst keeping your spine straight. It can't bend. Whilst keeping it straight will allow you to have a really, really solid braced core. Now, if you want to test that your core is activated, a really good idea is actually if you put your fingers either side of your belly button, just where your rectus abdominis finishes, so just a little bit wider than your belly button, and do a cough. And as you cough, you'll feel that your stomach contracts. You can feel the muscles tighten. And that's a sign that you're stabilized, and that's a sign your core is activated. So it's a really great teaching point to use with your clients to get them to activate their core massively. Now, all of these four muscles work together to make sure that pressure is taken off the intervertebral discs and allows you to coordinate your movements.